The Ford Capri was nothing more than a Cortina in a sports jacket. Now, it had fewer doors than a Cortina, less space inside than a Cortina, and to top it all, it cost more than a Cortina. But when it comes to coupes, only one thing matters: style. If they look good, we'll buy them. And there's no doubt at all that Ford are still on the right track with their new coupe, the American-made Cougar. We've seen pictures of it and they made us gasp. We saw it at the Geneva Motor Show, where we learned that a fully loaded V6 will cost just £22,000. We've seen it in all the car magazines, and right now motoring journalists from all over Britain are testing it on the continent. But despite repeated promises, Ford have decided not to lend one to Top Gear for tonight's programme, and this, I think, was a mistake. You see, in a BBC Two tradition started by Have I Got News For You, people or things who promise to turn up and then don't get replaced with a tub of lard. So, here it is, everyone, the new Ford Cougar. And that is what it's up against. All these cars cost between £20,000 and £30,000, and pretty well all of them are excellent. But I'm looking for the best, and as a result I have to start the elimination process by picking nits. So we wave an early goodbye to the Toyota Celica and the Honda Prelude. As I said at the beginning, coupes have to look so good that you start to pant and whimper when you see one. These two failed the test. What I'm looking for here is Anna Friel, and what I see here is a brace of Judy Finnegans. Mercedes, on the other hand, has got it absolutely right with the CLK. Whenever I see one of these cars on the road, I whinny like a horse. However, while looks are important, crucial even, value matters too, and on that front the Mercedes has a couple of problems. If you buy a fast one, it's too expensive, and if you buy a cheap one, it's too slow. Beautiful girl. For the same price as a 2-litre Merc, you could have this 3-litre Peugeot 406 Coupe. But don't get excited, because the running costs are horrendous. Over a 3-year period, the Peugeot will cost a massive £22,000, £3,000 more than the Mercedes. I therefore don't care how beautiful it is, and it is beautiful. It's got to go. So, what am I going to get rid of next? Well, obviously, it's the BMW. For £26,000, the same money as the Peugeot or a small-engine Mercedes, you can have this, a large-engined 328i. But that's not a good idea for 3 reasons. First, it's only a 2-door saloon rather than a proper coupe. Second, there's a new model coming out later this year. And third, it's a BMW. So no one will let you out of side turnings. And now it's time to wave goodbye to the Volvo C70. On the upside, it looks terrific and does 150 miles an hour. But on the downside, it costs £30,000, and to be honest, the driving experience is a daunting cocktail of wheel spin, traction control interference, and turbo lag. Could be worse, though. It could be the tub of lard. This thing has a bouncy ride and just won't go round corners at all. Now this stunning 20-valve turbocharged Fiat Coupe is a wonderful car to drive, but in the JD Power survey, people who bought one told us the ownership experience is not so wonderful. Pity, really. So, with just 2 cars left, we arrive at the Nissan 200 SX, which, like the BMW, isn't a proper coupe. It also has a Nissan badge and an interior which appears to have been designed by Lord Irvine. So, what's it still doing in the running? Well, I'll show you. Like the BMW and Mercedes, this has rear-wheel drive. But unlike the BMW and Mercedes, you get 200 brake horsepower for just £21,800. On a smile per pound basis, it's fantastic. This car reminds me of a restaurant that I used to go to in Barnsley. From the outside it looked awful, and inside there were plastic tablecloths and horrid sauce bottles. But the food was so good, I just kept going back for more. However, it can't win because while it's a great car to drive, it instills no sense of pride. At night, you walk into your house without a backward glance. Now, you can buy any one of the cars we've eliminated and you'll like it. They're all good. But there's one car left which is utterly and completely brilliant. Here it is, everyone. The king of petrolhead heaven. The new Alfa Romeo GTV6. Now, I want to make something perfectly plain from the outset here. This car is nowhere near perfect. It's noisy, the driving position is suitable only for a monkey, and I just know that once a month it would suffer from PMT. Leave the top off the toothpaste tube, and in the morning, it'll throw a clock radio at you. At £28,000, it's also very expensive, and to make matters worse, a new model with tweaked bodywork and a 6-speed gearbox is due out in the autumn. And I haven't finished yet. Those rear seats are a joke, and though you may not believe it, the boot is even worse. Okay if you're a pea salesman, not so good if you sell broad beans. As a practical proposition, this car is useless. But would you just take a look under the bonnet? Never mind that that's a brand new 220 horsepower 3-litre V6. Just look at it. And when you see detailing like that brake assembly, you just know that this car's gonna stir your soul with an egg whisk. The normal 2-litre GTV is lovely to drive, but this V6, it's a mini Ferrari. The steering is just perfect. Then you've got this incredible acceleration, any gear, any revs. Oh, and don't worry about the grip, because this car's got the most amazing chassis. And the top speed's 150, I swear. There are only a handful of cars in the entire world round a racetrack that'd keep up with it. And on the road you can sit back, smug in the knowledge that it's making other road users pant with desire. It looks so good that even after a long, hard drive, you just can't leave it alone. The GTV6 is daft, but I absolutely adore it. When we finally get our hands on a Ford Cougar, sometime in the next series I hope, this is what it'll have to beat. Not only the nicest coupe we've seen all night, but one of the nicest cars I have ever driven.
while ago, I promised I'd highlight the shameful difference between the prices of new cars in mainland Europe and Britain.
You see, car makers over here are trying to tuck us up. A Ford Escort costs 45% more in the UK than it does across the pond. Likewise, a Peugeot 306, 43%, a BMW 316, 30%. Even if you buy a humble Ford Fiesta, you will be paying 44% more than your continental counterpart, and that just isn't fair.
I promised to expose the car manufacturer's price rigging and show you how to save a shed-load of money on your next new right-hand drive motor.
Which is why I'm off to Brussels, to ask, no, to insist that the European Commission gets heavy, that it reads these billion-dollar car companies the Riot Act, because frankly, they're taking the wee-wee.
Since our first look at importing cars from Europe, the European Commission has fined Volkswagen £68 million for preventing German buyers from buying cheaper cars in Italy. And even more of you have had a crack yourselves. You've come up against the usual excuses, but by being tenacious, some of you have come home with some very cheap cars.
And not giving up is what it's all about. Car makers know that it's illegal to stop you buying a car in Europe. So what they do instead is they get dealers to throw obstacles in your way, hoping you'll just walk away and give the whole thing up. But, and I promise you this, as long as you don't throw in the towel, you will save yourself a bundle.
Mark Murley of Glasgow wanted a Land Rover Discovery. By going to Belgium, he saved, are you sitting down, 10 grand.
It started last year. I was on holiday in the States and noticed that European cars, very heavily specified, were 30 to 40% cheaper than cars in the UK. When I got home, I contacted other European dealers to try and find out if that was true in the rest of Europe, and to a great extent it was. When I asked for quotes, unfortunately they said they can't supply British. They were willing to quote but wouldn't take it any further in many cases. To overcome this, I'm lucky in that I've got a family member who lives in Belgium. So I managed to get a quote through her and was able to order, travelling out to pay a deposit and make sure the specification was correct, and then collecting my car 3 months later. I saved £10,000 on a car that lists in the UK at £32,000 with the extras I put on it.
Michael Thomas of Oxford fancied a Volvo V70. He went to Holland and saved himself £7,500.
I was very surprised about how easy it was, in fact, to import a car from the continent. The car we imported came from Holland, and I dealt in fact with Volvo directly. They made life incredibly easy for me. They delivered the car in the specified time, which was 4 to 6 weeks, a car that is the full UK specification, obviously right-hand drive, right-hand headlights. They, for a small fee, arranged the export plates. Then it was just a case of going and picking up the car, getting it back here, and in the process saving myself £7,500.
But don't think it's always easy. Roger Lamin of Northampton had a hard time saving 5 grand on an Audi A4 he bought in Cologne.
Although I saved £5,000, the experience itself was somewhat traumatic at times. Prices changed. From a German spec was different to a UK spec, and they increased the prices. Within those 6 months, I had no or very little communication from the dealership, and I felt very concerned at times as to whether I was going to get the car or not. I would do it again. The 3 things I learnt are A, getting the money for the VAT before you travel out. B, make sure you got the English specification prices. And finally, last but not least, find the dealership that speaks English.
So here we are, Brussels, capital of European democracy. I'm off to the European Commission to find someone with some serious juice.
And I wasn't having any bureaucratic flannel either. I came armed with a file of the letters you've been sending to us at Top Gear, ready to hand them over to the European Commission investigators.
We have made an inspection in the premises of Opel in the Netherlands and of Mercedes in 4 other countries. And we have collected documents. We are still about to analyze them, and we will see whether we can establish an infringement or whether we can't.
And you're going to carry on going heavy on these people to make sure they get the job done?
Yes, we will of course use all the legal instruments we have to enforce this obligation.
I think it is the case as well that right-hand drive cars are being sold in mainland Europe. We have a figure from one manufacturer which shows that 7% of their sales in the Netherlands alone are right-hand drive cars to British consumers.
But there are some car manufacturers who don't want to make it easy for you. Last week, the Sunday Times approached a number of car makers. Their reporters posed as businessmen, wanting to set up a retail park close to the entrance to the Channel Tunnel in France. They said they wanted to sell right-hand drive cars at cheaper continental prices. These are some of the reactions.
Those who are strong in Britain, I would expect, would be very loath to talk to you about having one right next door to the channel. Yeah. Because they would have two things. One, their profit would be hit like mad. And two, if there are still dealer bodies in the current franchise system, they'd have a revolution. I would be very surprised that anybody, as I say, apart from those who may be really weak in the British market, who would be running there. That would be like turkeys voting for Christmas.
I think all the manufacturers, and I will speak only for Peugeot, we are very satisfied with this situation because the gross margin in the Britain market is very comfortable for us. Yeah. Peugeot will never sell a right-hand drive car in France.
Sure. I mean, if you install a right-hand drive center in France just to sell right-hand drive cars, it would be a problem for sure.
When we spoke to them, Fiat said they stick to the law and won't stop UK buyers buying right-hand drive cars abroad. Nissan came up with the usual arguments about the strong pound, difference in spec and warranty, and like Fiat, they say their prices are set by bigger players in the British market. So it looks like it might be a while before buying cars is as easy as buying duty-free. But if you're determined and prepared to take the trouble, you can still save yourself a bundle. Here is our lightning guide. First, choose your country. At the moment, Portugal and Holland have the cheapest cars. Next, get a list of dealers in your chosen country from the manufacturer in Britain. Then it's time for a slog on the phone. Ring dealers to find out if they'll supply you with right-hand drive. Better still, go yourself and talk eye to eye. Make sure you and the dealer understand the exact UK spec and don't forget to work out how much you'll be saving. Get the exact price, spec and delivery time in writing. Watch they don't hit you with a hidden supplement for right-hand drive. Buy your money in advance in a foreign currency draft to get the best exchange rate. Do it soon lest the pound should slip. Send your dealer a deposit, anything between 20 and 50%. Make sure they confirm your order and receipt of your deposit in writing. Then you wait. At worst, it could be a nail-biting 9 months before your car is actually ready. Get transit plates from your dealer, plus a certificate of conformity to EU regulations. Get your dealer to arrange transit insurance to drive the car home. If he won't, there are brokers in England who will. Then it's time to head for home and make sure you keep all your travel receipts. Once you're back in Blighty, go smartly to Customs and Excise and pay your VAT, 17.5% on the price you paid. Go to your nearest local vehicle licensing office to register and tax the car. And then, finally, the best bit, affix number plates and tax disc and drive away.
And here's a thought. As long as we keep hammering away at these car manufacturers, prices of new cars will inevitably come down. They're far, far too expensive here in the first place. And that means we won't have to go across the channel to buy them. And I, for one, can't wait. If you have tears, prepare to shed them now, for this is the last programme in the current Top Gear series. But don't worry, don't reach for the razor blades, because we'll be back in the autumn with the very best from the wheeled world. But in the meantime, I can offer you a couple of crumbs of comfort. This summer, there'll be a new product from the Top Gear stable. It'll be fast, it'll be exciting, and I can promise you there won't be a single car in sight, because Top Gear is taking
to the water. If you think boating means boring, think again. We've got super-fast boats, war machines, floating gin palaces, aquatic eccentricities, and even the odd sail. Roll up your trousers. Top Gear Waterworld splashes onto your screens Thursday, 23rd of July, 8:30, BBC Two.
And we've got another project which is going to keep us all away from the Dole office this summer. A brand new series of The Car's the Star. We want to hear from you if your life has been touched by any of these 6 rather different motor cars. Were you ever seduced by a 7, Caterham or Lotus? Did you terrorise the town in a Hillman Imp, Singer Chamois or Sunbeam Stiletto? Perhaps you fell for that Germanic gem, the Porsche 911. Britain's most popular car in the 60s was the 1100. Surely everyone has a story to tell. Or are you a larder lout and honest enough to admit it? Maybe you're one of the lucky few who owned an AC Cobra. If so, please tell all. So if you bought, sold, crashed, mended, owned, coveted or courted any of this little lot, we'd love to hear from you. Write to The Car's the Star, BBC Pebble Mill Road, Birmingham, B5 7QQ, or call 0121 432 8844.
In days of old, when men were bold, the great steeds that they raced would, more often than not, have a whistling, whining supercharger pumping extra air into its gasping lungs. Of course, the great British Bentleys that dominated Le Mans in the mid-20s didn't resort to such crude additions, but the dastardly German Mercedes that threatened their reign did. So a shining knight by the name of Tim Birkin strapped one on the front of his Bentley and set such a pace that the opposition expired under the strain. And this is the very first of those Birkin blower Bentleys, with its supercharger sitting very obviously right out at the front. There are various types of supercharger, but they're all driven by the crankshaft. The Bentley uses the Roots blower principle, which quite literally blows extra air into the induction system, whilst other superchargers compress the air and force it in. They're all very simple ways of improving engine breathing, but they do sap a bit of power and they can make a bit of a din. In the post-war years, the supercharger became something of a forgotten fad. And when in 1948 Jaguar launched the first of their XK range of sports cars, this glorious XK120 with 160 horsepower from its 3.4-litre straight-six engine, it was felt there was no need for all the noise and aggravation of a blower. Indeed, only now, a full 50 years later, do we get the first ever supercharged XK Jaguar, the XKR. And just like the Bentley, it uses a Roots blower system. It looks almost identical to the XK8, but the addition of a wire mesh grille, louvers in the bonnet, this tiny boot spoiler and distinctive 18-inch rims gives the rather passive shape a nice aggressive edge. Now, of course, the question is, why the supercharger? After all, it's been exhaust-driven turbochargers that have been all the rage ever since Porsche first fitted one to a GT car back in 1975. Turbos were a must on Grand Prix cars for most of the 80s until they were outlawed for simply being too powerful, and no sporty road car would be seen dead without one. And the answer lies right here with this automatic transmission, an item central to the marketing theme for target buyers of modern-day XKs. With a turbo, you need plenty of revs to really get it going. Once on song, it certainly is more efficient and more effective than a supercharger. But if you just want to dawdle along and then just go, it's the supercharger that's more ready for instant action. that mysterious wonder of torque is what it's all about. Let's face it, we can only do 30 or 50 or 70, and this isn't the sort of car that you're going to take to a track for a thrash around. You just want to get to the limit as quickly as possible, and lots of torque means lots of acceleration. The supercharger pushes the power of the 4-litre V8 up from 290 to 370 horsepower, but perhaps more importantly, it delivers the same torque at just 1200 revs as the normally aspirated version has at its optimum. So, when you want to just get away from the crowd, you simply go. Oh, that's 30 miles an hour. And when you catch up with the 40-mile-an-hour crawl on the country roads, you're able to overtake very quickly and therefore very safely. And if you do get away to the Autobahn and want to show off to the old German rivals, the acceleration at the top end is perhaps even more impressive. This supercharged XKR will accelerate from 140 miles an hour to its limited maximum of 155, a full 50 seconds faster than the normally aspirated XK8. And that's thanks not so much to the extra 80 horsepower, but more to that extra 100 pounds-foot of torque. Jaguar engineers have worked long and hard on the downside of the intrusive noise of a supercharger. There is still a little whistle there, but you wouldn't want it any other way. And I have to say, the more I drive this XKR, the more I'm impressed with it as a driver's car. I was expecting something a bit soft and wallowy, but the handling really is very taut and the feedback through the steering is excellent. Even the ride is nice and firm, especially considering that this is a luxury GT car. The automatic transmission is one of the best I've used. The kickdown comes in very smoothly indeed. And this famous Jaguar J-gate is very nice to use in its manual mode. All of this must be bad news for the other Ford-owned Grand Tourer, because at £60,000 for the coupe and £67,000 for the convertible, the Aston Martin DB7 is now outperformed and underpriced by 20 grand. Well, I guess that's the price you have to pay for something that is perhaps a little prettier and certainly a lot more exclusive. Oh, to have the choice. And if you want to be sure to see an XKR close up, get yourself to Top Gear Live at Silverstone over the bank holiday weekend, May 22nd to 25th.
Well, that's it for this series, but don't forget Top Gear Live, Friday the 22nd to Monday the 25th of May. Call 0990 122200 for more details. And here's the address and phone number for Quentin's The Car's the Star. That, of course, will keep him occupied. The rest of us will be appearing at a Sheffield nightclub naked as the day we were born. And we're even thinking of making a film about it, though we don't know whether that'll really catch on. Still, it's being a milkman, I suppose, or doing a paper round, or the other things we had to do last summer when Top Gear wasn't on the air, which was...
But Top Gear Motorsport